She started her business from scratch and transformed it into one of South Africa's most well-known jewelry brands. This is Woman on Wealth, and I'm Nozi Pombandra. Tonight, our woman on the money is Jenna Clifford. We also speak to Christina Pretorius, a director at Norton Rose Fulbright, and she provides you with advice on how to get one up on your marriage contract. And in our Power Redefined, we reveal why Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka is making waves. But before that, you can join the conversation on Twitter. That's #Wow410 to answer today's question. Should you sign a prenuptial contract before saying I do? No one wants to come out second best in their marriage contract. To find out how to ensure this doesn't happen to you, we spoke to Christina Pretorius, director at Norton Rose Fulbright, South Africa. Christina, thank you so much for making the time to join us. Now, a question right at the top of my mind is, does marriage make financial sense for women?
I don't think you should be basing your decision on whether to get married on financial considerations. But if you do decide to get married, it's very important to understand the implications of the different marital regimes.
Right. Let's look at those regimes. I understand that there are 3 main contracts that a woman should be considering. Can you talk us through them?
Yes, the first one, being married in community of property, in fact doesn't require a contract at all. If you just get married without doing anything, you will automatically be married in community of property. That means that there will only be one estate, and all assets or liabilities that you bring into the marriage and all assets and liabilities that you accrue while you are married form part of this joint estate. It's very important though that this is not only assets. A lot of women think, or a lot of poorer spouses think, if I marry rich, I'm set for life. Yeah. It's important to note that the liabilities come along as well.
Right. And what happens to the assets accrued before you actually get married when we look at in community of property? Do you have ownership over that as well, or joint ownership over that?
Yes, all of your assets will then become part of the joint estate, so both spouses will have joint ownership of the assets. In other words, I would not be able to sell my car, for example, without my husband's signature, because half of the car belongs to him.
Right. So let's look at out of community of property then.
This is the more normal way of doing things. It is what many people choose to do. It is certainly what I've chosen to do. This is where you enter into an antenuptial contract, or what the Americans call a prenup, in terms of which you choose your marital regime. Out of community of property can have with accrual or without accrual, but for the purposes of this discussion, let's start with without accrual.
Right.
That means everything that's mine is mine, everything that's yours is yours. Everything I make during the course of the marriage remains mine, everything you make remains yours. Everything you've brought in remains yours. It's completely separate.
Very unromantic, but makes a lot of sense.
Well, it doesn't always make sense, because what happens if one spouse stays at home to take care of the children?
Right.
It's not entirely fair for one spouse to give up their career to raise the other spouse's children and perhaps support the other spouse in their career to the detriment of their own. That is why we have what's called the accrual system. So if you are entering into an antenuptial contract, you choose whether you would like the accrual system to apply or not. And if you are silent, because it is the more fair way to go, the accrual system automatically applies.
Right. So let's look at whether I have the scope to move from one to the other. Here's a scenario. I'm a career woman, he's a career man. We're both focusing on our corporate lives. And then I take the decision that I actually want to be a stay-at-home mom. And we initially were in the non-accrual system. Is it easy for me to change my mind and say, actually, let's change the ball game here, because I want to be a mom, but I also want to benefit from what you have?
It is possible. It is not as easy as it sounds. An antenuptial contract is not the same as any other contract. It has to be concluded in front of a notary, and it has to be registered with the deeds office. It is a change of your status. Therefore, to amend that contract, you actually have to bring a court application with both parties' consent to amend the contract in the deeds office.
Christina, where does this leave me as a black woman who potentially might be married in the traditional sense and not necessarily go the recognized Western legal sense?
The legal governance of customary marriages is very different from civil marriages, and the reason for that is because polygamy is allowed. So if you have entered into a customary marriage and more than 2 spouses are involved, you're not actually allowed in terms of the Marriage Act to enter into a civil union, because a civil union or a civil marriage is between 2 people.
Right.
That will obviously change your marital property regime as well. I have to admit that I'm not an expert on customary marriages, but as far as I can recall, you are going to be automatically out of community of property. And if you choose not to be, you'd have to have each spouse that enters into the customary marriage, there will have to be a contract with everyone governing the regime. Otherwise, you can imagine, let's say a husband has 3 or 4 wives, wife number 4 has a gambling problem and runs up huge amounts of debts.
Right.
Wife number 1's house gets sold to cover the debt. That's not entirely fair either.
Right. Before I let you go, very quickly, some of the red flags that you think women should be looking out for just as they're about to put pen to paper.
Make sure it's the right man.
Christina, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us. Wow, that was some powerful advice. We took to the streets to find out, should you sign a prenuptial contract before saying I do? And this is what you had to say.
I don't know, it's hard to answer. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Less fighting, sign a prenup. It's the only way.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, they should sign a prenup.
Yes. Why? Because you don't want a cheating husband to take your money.
Based on your views, it's clear that we definitely want to keep the prenuptial agreement and not to toss them. This week, our woman on the money is highly successful jewelry designer Jenna Clifford. She has seen her handcrafted designs being worn by celebrities, including singer Celine Dion and super tennis stars the Williams sisters. Jenna, what would you describe as a game-changing or destiny-changing moment in your life?
I think I have had a few of those clangers, and what I used to say is, hey, I've got the lemon. We're going to have to make lemonade. And I think most of us have that type of defining moment. Right. But it's been various moments in my life. But you're obviously talking about the younger moments when you decide to go into a certain faculty, industry, or whatever. Yeah. I was quite challenged at school, by the way. I'm not left-brained. I did pass. I don't know how I passed. Yeah. I got a matric D. That was a miracle because I had nightmares about my matric until about 16 years ago. Right. So I knew I wasn't an academic. And this world always frowns upon people that are not academics because you have to have title to be someone. I enjoy the more maverick style of when they don't see you coming. And as long as you don't injure anybody, steal, and you've got the best intentions for everybody around you, win-win, and you have a talent, with copious amounts of work, like as Maxwell said, 10,000 hours, you usually start to shine.
You've obviously led many teams. Talk to me about the 2 leadership attributes that you would say, these are my 2 crutches that I have continuously lent against and that have really helped me to unlock the best out of the people that I work with.
I think my main thing is I know what marginalization is. I know what pain is. I know what pain bodies are about. I know what the real program is. So I've always tried to be very inclusive, even not necessarily only for people that work with me, but all those around me. I have a direct responsibility to try and alter the status quo in this country for women and business, because entrepreneurship is definitely needed. Our fiscal is firing on 2%. And, you know, we occupy just over 50% of the populace. So that's simply not good enough. And 15% of women on senior boards is also not good enough. Women are fully capable. And all international results now are reflecting that when there's women on exco boards, the performance is definitely there. And I think for all the real men out there, they know women are not a threat. They're a definite ally and a definite ingredient of success.
Obviously, there must have been some sacrifices along the road. What have you had to give up to be where you are?
My partner, I think, stuck it out with me now. We're on our 24th year. Wow. And I think if he really is honest with himself, it's a tough act because I don't like any man speaking down at me, irrespective to my limited education. I like to be asked nicely. I believe in non-structured rules because you get the best out of people. Yeah. Boys like rules because then they can point fingers. And I've done a whole lot of things that are possibly a bit different that seem maverick in style, but I don't think I've hurt very many people along the way doing that. But I'm only happy and wealthy when it's more inclusive. But also this country needs its business policies, it's labor adapted. It's killing entrepreneurship. You know, today, to go and get any license to operate any business, if you're running within the parameters of the law, especially newcos, if you've had a limited education like myself, the chances of you getting through now, according to all the higher learning institutes, is almost nil. So if we want growth opportunities and we want more fiscal and a bigger tax net, we've got to sort that out. And people my age and older, and this is reflectant on a lot of captains of industry that I might do their artwork for their wives or for themselves or for whatever. The general tune is, we kind of tired. We kind of tired. So they're not looking now to grow businesses, they're looking to give up businesses and things like that. So that doesn't really spell the greatest forecast for South Africa, because our tax base is only 7% of our population. So that's dire. And for a stupid person like me that really is incapacitated on the left brain, if I can see it for all these years since a child, surely politicians can see this. Right. Surely business is going to stand up. Business is scared to stand up. Very scared. I know that.
Of course, every week we bring you a woman who is defying the traditional concept of power. Let's take a look at a woman who is responsible for the livelihoods of 4 billion women around the world. In 2005, she became the first woman in South Africa to hold the position of deputy president. During her term, she was at the forefront of driving programs to fight poverty and to ensure that women benefited from the country's economic growth. Prior to this, Mlambo Ngcuka held the portfolios of Minister of Minerals and Energy and Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. After leaving politics in 2008, she established a foundation to tackle poor performance in rural schools and set up a micro-lending enterprise to make finance more accessible to women entrepreneurs. Earlier this year, United Nations Secretary General appointed her as Under-Secretary Executive Director of UN Women. She's the first African to hold this top position. Her mandate? To drive the economic emancipation of the almost 4 billion women around the world. Next week, WOW will be taking a break as CNBC Africa brings you the finale of Top Trader. We'll be back on the 11th of December. Until then, keep the conversation going on Twitter using hashtag WOW410. From me and the team, stay empowered.